If you're here to be told that AI is a villain and you are the victim, this won't be helpful to you. You can leave now. Not because this is harsh, but because it refuses a comforting story. The people who stay usually already sense that something doesn't add up. Open your phone, look at what dominates your feed, panic about machines, headlines about ChatGPT taking paychecks, endless arguments about whether creativity, coding, or thinking itself is about to be automated out of existence. It's a clean fear, visual contained, and deeply incomplete. I believe it too. I assume the pressure on work would arrive as replacement. Software doing tasks faster, humans slowly edged out of efficiency. But while everyone was staring at screens, something edged shift, quietly without announcement. The venue for work itself began to fail. The story we are being fed says AI will replace our jobs or change how you work. That part is true. What it avoids saying is this: climate breakdown decades whether work is possible at all. That distinction matters. This didn't come from me or I'm not making up things. It came from noticing contradictions I couldn't explain away. Jobs disappearing that were not automated. Factories idling, not because of demand, but because conditions made operations impossible. A supply chain stalling without a single line of code involved. There was a moment when I had to admit something uncomfortable. If AI were the real threat, the damage would look different. You would see a clean substitution. Instead, what kept showing up were constraints: heat, water, energy, insurance. That was a pivot, not fear of machines. Fear of physics. There was a biological ceiling the economy doesn't like to talk about. Human labor runs on bodies, not abstractions. When heat and humidity combine beyond a certain threshold, the body can't cool itself. Sweating stops working, productivity doesn't decline, it shuts off. This isn't speculative. At around 2 degrees of global warming, large parts of world enter what I now think of as an unworkable zone. Not unprofitable, unworkable. I stopped thinking in terms of job loss. I started thinking in terms of job viability. This reframing came with pressure. There was no way to keep pretending this was a future problem. Constructions halting because touching metal causes burns. Delivery routes collapsing because drivers can't survive the heat. Entire labor market constrained not by wages but by temperature. When you see that clearly, the AI panic starts to feel misplaced. White collar workers often assume insulation equals immunity. Air conditioning, cloud software, digital leverage. That assumption only holds if the foundation beneath it survives. Agriculture, logistics, construction, energy, these aren't optional layers, they are load bearing. When they overheat, everything above them fractures. AI can generate a marketing plan. It can't harvest crops in lethal humidity. It can't repair a power grid during a heat wave. And it definitely can't function without electricity, water, and physical infrastructure. There was a point where this became unavoidable for me, watching global choke points fail for reasons no algorithm could solve. Take the supply chain. When the canal dries up, ships don't move. When ships don't move, parts don't arrive. When parts don't arrive, factories stop. And when factories stop, people are sent home, not laid off by a robot, followed by drought. This is what now called the climate layoff. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't trend on tech Twitter. It arrives as a quiet message: we can't operate today. The irony deepens when you look closer. During drought-driven heat waves, power plants shut down, factories filled with automations go dark because there is no electricity. The machines everyone fears sits idle, waiting on a stable climate that no longer exists. At 2 degrees of warming, infrastructure failure stops being an anomaly. It becomes a line item. Roads buckle, rails warp, cables flood, networks degrade. You can't build a high-tech economy on a planet that can't hold its shape. Then comes a part that looks boring until it isn't. Cost. AI deflates the prices of digital output. Climate inflates the cost of survival, food, energy, water, insurance. I started calling this climate inflation because it behaves differently from anything central banks know how to manage. When crops fail, prices spike. When cooling becomes essential, energy demand explodes. When disaster becomes frequent, insurance retreats. When people spend most of their income staying alive, discretionary demands disappears. No upgrades, no subscription, no growth. Entire sectors don't shrink because they are obsolete. They shrink because the customers can't afford them. That's when layoff arrives. Not from automations, from contraction. And behind all this sits the system that quietly props up capitalism itself: insurance. Because there will be no insurance, no mortgages, no factories. There will be no offices, no startups. When insurer decides certain regions are uninsurable, investment stops cold, not gradually, instantly. I have watched this realization unsettle people who thought skills were the only defense. You can be irreplaceable and still unemployed. If capital can't operate where you live, this isn't about talent, it's about investability. Once you see that, migration stops looking like a separate issue. It's the downstream effect. When land stops producing food, people move. When heat makes region hostile, people leave. This creates pressure on cities, borders, politics, and labor markets all at once. Instability isn't a moral failure, it's a system's response. Businesses don't thrive in uncertainty. Supply chains don't survive conflicts. Markets don't function when region becomes ungovernable. AI might automate tasks. Climate instability can erase entire economies. And here is the part that still feels absurd every time I say it out loud. The thing we are obsessing over is accelerating the thing we are ignoring. Training large AI models consumes staggering amounts of electricity and water. Cooling data centers strains already fragile resources. The race to automate is drawing from the same well agriculture depends on. We are burning the floor to optimize furniture. So, why does the conversation stay fixated on AI? Because it's a clean antagonist. It has a face, a narrative, a villain. Climate doesn't offer that. It implicates everything: consumption, comfort, normal life. Blaming software is easier than confronting physics. The 2-degree threshold isn't abstract, it's a boundary condition for economic we recognize. Once you cross it, the question shifts. Not how to stay competitive, not how to outskill a machine, but how work functions at all in destabilized world. Most people are preparing for the wrong exam. The bots aren't coming for your paychecks. The environment your paychecks depends on already is.